now 2013. We meet at this time slot every month, the first Tuesday of the month at 10 a.m. Pacific. The series is co-hosted by RSF Social Finance with advising from a wonderful group of community capital pioneers listed on our series website, and with underwriting support from RSF, Portfolio 21 Investments, Main Street Resources, and the Solidago Foundation. So these webinars are focused on tools you can take home and try out right away. Each month we feature a case study with a community capital innovator, someone who's developed and piloted a working model for connecting local people's investments in businesses and farms to local needs using local resources. The innovators present their model, and we allow time for dialogue and questions. So we suggest you treat these calls as an opportunity to bring together a group of business owners, social entrepreneurs, lenders, philanthropists, and investors in your community who are interested in the topic. After listening to the webinar, you might spend an hour discussing with your group the applicability and relevancy to your community. We encourage these roundtables so you never have to pay extra per attendee on the same webinar line. Within the next week or so, we will be posting our April, May, and July webinars. We won't be hosting a webinar in this series in June, as that's the month of our annual conference in Buffalo, where we hope you will all be joining us in person to keep exploring community capital and other local living economy work areas. So that conference is taking place June 12th through 14th in Buffalo, New York. And again, full information is on our website at balocalist.org. So today we're speaking with Arno Hesse of Credible's model and Clearbon. So Arno is going to take us through this model for edible credits, which is already being piloted in a number of communities around the United States, and is a technology and an approach that is available in a number of additional communities. So Arno is co-founder of Clearbon, which focuses on funding and financing solutions for small businesses. He's a founding member of Slow Money, as well as the local chapter Slow Money Northern California, where he works on directing investments into local food systems. So I'm delighted today, Arno, that we're going to hear from you about your model for prepayment crowdfunding and how it can work in the food sector and maybe ultimately beyond. So with that, Arno, I'm going to give you the floor, and I know you'll need a minute here to get your screen share pulled up.
Yeah, thank you, Alyssa. It's a pleasure to be with you all, and thanks for joining us today. And while I bring the stuff, I also have to say I've been on a few of those calls myself before, and it's an honor to be presenting Credible today to you all. So what I will do in the next half an hour, we go through the concept, what we're trying to accomplish with Credible. Work with a little case study of a company that's on the program, and then we'll finish how to get on the program, and that would lead then into Q&A.
All right, and then Arno, before you proceed, I want to cue everyone. When Arno starts a screen share, it pops everyone into full screen mode. But if you'd like to still be able to see the chat window to the right of your screen, you can mouse up to the top of the screen, and that will pull down a little toolbar. And right in the middle of that toolbar is an icon that says Exit Full Screen. So again, you can mouse to the top of the screen, pull down the toolbar, and then hit the Exit Full Screen button, and you'll be able to see our slides as well as the chat window. So thanks, Arno. Take it away.
Thanks, Alyssa. Yes, I know that the webinars can always be a little bit of a organizational problem, but think of all the carbon that we're not blasting out by coming together in a room right now. So I'm, as Alyssa said, I'm a co-leader here of Slow Money in Northern California, and a lot of this, the idea of the credit came out of the Slow Money world. And I've invested personally, I'm on the investor side. I invested personally in a number of local food ventures that are great, and where I'm also a delighted consumer of anything between pastured chicken farms, farmland itself, compost, or fermented sauerkraut. I have a stake in this. now the question is on and co-founded Credibles, and that should be a way to provide local investing as an act that everybody can engage in, not just people with big bank accounts, philanthropists or foundations who we all love. But I'm coming from this a little bit more from the mass market perspective. I got involved in slow money more. I was at a large bank here on the West Coast. I was responsible for their retail products and marketing at Union Bank. And so we had customers in the millions, and that's something I'm systemically more dealing with millions than with millionaires. And of course, we cherish them as well. And also my background is, as you can hear from my accent, I grew up in Europe, in Germany, a little bit in France. And I was used to be in large political movements and worked as a journalist back then. So this is how I came into trying to make this slow money more accessible, if you will. And so think about making it investment more accessible, meaning for the rest of us, for the 99%. We of course think about crowdfunding in the discussion that we hear about it now, and then we remember President Obama signed the Jobs Act last year, and so we thought now it's all possible and legal and we can go ahead. And we're learning right now, it's not quite there yet, so the SEC will actually still take some time to put some rules around this, and then the industries or the people and institutions who will serve the new crowdfunding will get out into the public. What we are talking about today, though, credibles, edible credits, funding through prepayment as royalty is completely compliant with what is possible today. So the service is opening today. Companies are using it. We don't need to wait for the SEC to come out with the rules for the Jobs Act. It's a reality today. And it's also, like, from a slow money perspective, the first slow money principle is let's bring money back down to earth. That's also in that spirit, bringing our money back down to earth with the concept of edible credit. Now, let's talk about edible credit as a concept, and then we'll see how it actually technically works. So the concept of edible credit is the idea that we pay for great food in advance, because the food kind of needs to be fed as well. And so if we're all in sync on the slides here, you see the girls of Y Rock Farm, which is a farm that has cheese with the help of Credibles. And of course, as we point out, they need to be fed first before we get fed. And the truth of the nature of food is that good food just needs time and also money to grow and ripen to the point that we then buy it and pay for it. In the meantime, of course, the producer of the food, the farmer, the fermenter, or the cheese maker, they of course have the expenses and need to finance the chicklets, the feed for the chicken, the farm labor. And food just has its way that it often takes 4, 5, 6, and like in the case of strawberries, we're being told 9 months of a whole cycle that needs to be pre-financed before the customer comes in to the marketplace or to the store and pays money for this. And that is in a way that nature has a certain slowness of the money metabolism already built in. So that's like slow money is in a way built in nature with their cycles of growing and harvesting. So we're trying to mimic that with our service a little bit. So the very idea is if you prepay your food, you get payback in products. So for the entrepreneur, you're not, if you were going to a loan or you were going a loan at a traditional lender, at a bank, or even a nice credit union, they would expect that you have your monthly payments coming back, the principal and the interest, and this is cash coming out of your register. With Credibles, the idea of prepayment is you get the loan from your customers, and your customers you pay back in product and services. So, and these are things that you literally grow, whip up in the kitchen, or ferment, in this case here of farmhouse culture, which is here on the screen, which is a great organic sauerkraut and kimchi maker in Santa Cruz. And the entrepreneur knows, A, they have more control about their production capacity, what they can produce. Then they know months or a few years in advance how much money they have in a cash register to pay the loan back. And plus, what the jar of sauerkraut is to me as the customer, this is sold as a price point of $6 to $7. For the producer, they're paying basically the loan back at the cost of goods sold. What does it take to give that product to the customer? So there is also an interesting slowness built in that we basically turn products and services as a source of liquidity for money. Because if the people have the money up front, they can ramp up the production, expand, or have the working capital to sow the seeds for what they will later sell you. And this is very deliberate and very at the heart of the concept. We want to basically create the products and services into a source of liquidity, and that's what we call edible credit. Because let's see how we implement it in Credibles. The idea is you get credit at the business and you literally eat your credit over time. So the idea that we embed into that principle of edible credits, as you see it right now on the screen, is you plant your money, if you will, with the great food business that you're a customer of and probably take your money to all the time anyway. You give it to them up front. They have a chance to grow the food, and you come in and harvest basically the seeds of your prepaid money. So this is a principle that we want to turn into a mainstream model. So this is not meant, or when we designed it, it's not meant just for the choir, or you who would do like barter services like it has been done before. This ought to be a model that can be used for a regular family, a busy family of 5. This is the angle that we come add to this. And we know, now let's just go for a moment back to what I know from my banking past. All the traditional lenders hesitate to finance small food businesses. A, because they're small.
Arno?
So is that, yes?
Arno? This is Melissa. I was waiting for a break in the action, but I want to just do a spot check on the audio. So again, we've identified that for some reason the mute function isn't working fully properly here. So I want to just cue everyone because as new folks dial in, I'm automatically muting them, but it's not fully working. So we'll keep hanging through. If everyone, I want to take a moment and they can press *6 to go on mute. And then we'll stay on mute for the rest of the webinar, and we can make sure that we're hearing Arno well. So if everyone will take a moment and press *6. We'll give everyone a second to do that, and then hopefully Arno, as you continue, will be able to hear you beautifully. And I'll keep trying on my end, but it looks like there's something happening with the mute function. So we'll do the best we can to hang together, and then we'll figure out what's happening once we get off the line. But okay, so I think we've had a good moment for that. And sorry about that, Arno. Please continue.
No, this is fine. Of course, you guys need to hear it, and if you have problems, just put it in the private chat, and then I rely on Alyssa to service it up into the call. The reason that I'm also not doing questions in between because I'm serving up slides from the computer, so I cannot see the question panel. Otherwise, I would be seeing the questions and not the slides. So going back to our regular program, if you will. So the banks basically hesitate to underwrite small food businesses. They don't. The economics of small are not very conducive to put an underwriter on it and understand the business, as you know, and they are very selective of the ones that they can sometimes pigeonhole. And then their food business, a lot of them don't understand the food, or it takes too long for the underwriter to go out to the farm and try to wrap their heads around it if this is a risk that they want to take. So our intention is, if the banks have a problem underwriting small food businesses, here is a vehicle that communities can underwrite the businesses that they want to thrive. They can do their own underwriting. And so this fits very nicely in the community capital model of this entire series here. Okay, so now let's do a little switch on how does it work today. So if you go to credibles.org, this is what you are likely to see. This is Credibles is a web-based solution that works with a nice mobile extension that we will see in a moment. So this is the website, and on this, with this concept of Credibles, we're kind of marrying the CSA, that we get CSA draft boxes. We're marrying that with proven crowdfunding models, and a couple of guys may be familiar with the Indiegogos and Kickstarters of this world. Except you don't end up with store credit like you do with the model here. So on our website, you see basically then various businesses that have asked to be prepaid, and they're really all great businesses. They're all in the slow food or slow money family right now, and we're using the slow money organization also to do a little curation and pre-filtering here, and just see it between the meat CSA, yogurt creamery, and the aforementioned cheese creamery where you saw the sheep. Great businesses. To see a little bit more in detail how it works, why don't we focus in on one business? On the lower right corner is the Hillside Supper Club, the wonderful business here in San Francisco. And that's smaller because I'm a personal customer, I lean towards talking about stuff that I have eaten. So they do a community-based restaurant with very nice tie-in to the local farmers in the community, and they're very committed to the slow food movement as in itself. Here I met them actually at a slow food festival, and you see in the middle Jonathan and Tony, the chefs and owners of the Hillside Supper Club. And here they're a little bit starstruck. The head of Slow Food on the right side, and to see Alice Waters of Chez Panisse fame and Edward's schoolyards on the left. So, but they're like nicely engaged in the larger Slow Food community, and they're also very nice entrenched in the neighborhood, Donald Heights in San Francisco. So they have been doing nice community dinners where they bring the community together and they have been using their community embeddedness also to raise funds.
Arno?
Arno's okay.
I'll probably keep going until they call us back.
All right. Well, our mute function is definitely not working because now we can't hear Arno, and yet hear a bunch of you all as attendees. So, like I said, we do tons of tech dry runs every webinar and plenty in between, and we try to take all precautions. And every once in a while, you just seem to have one of those technology black hole days despite all of your efforts. So, let me see. Arno, are you still there? Part of what we're hearing, folks, is that Arno is in a location where he doesn't have good cell phone reception, and so he's calling Skype, and that's some of the chirping in the background that you're hearing. It's not actually a mute issue, it's a separate issue. So again, tech black hole day. So Arno, are you back? So if folks will hold tight, I'll see if I can get Arno back. Here's my goal.
Yes,
I'm going to be happy to refund anybody in terms of their costs for today, given the audio issues. And, of course, I would like to just be able to continue the conversation. So give me a minute or two here. We'll get him back. It may be that we need to just try again at a new time, but give me a minute. I'll see if I can get him back and we can continue with a little bit better audio.
Can you guys hear me again? I got dropped out.
Hi, Arno.
This one.
Okay. Okay, so we're
great.
back
So we've
on
got
here,
Arno. Everybody, since my manual mute is not working, we're hearing the beep through everybody else as folks come in and come out. So I feel everybody will do *6 to mute yourself, and then again we'll see if we can pick up the conversation and with a little bit more clarity, and then we'll follow up with everyone afterwards about how to keep accessing this model since we've had a little bit of tech disruption today. So *6, and then Arno, we'll see how we do with you. There was a little bit of chirping via your Skype line, but I'm hoping now that you're dialed back in, it'll be a little bit better connection.
Okay. I'm really appreciate that everybody's hanging in there with the slow, imperfect technology. We were talking about an example of one credible business, so it's the Hillside Supper Club. So they're nicely entrenched in the communities. They bring the farmers out into the community, cook their food, and they also then reach out to the community when they needed funding. The funding that they needed out is they started a couple of years ago as a pop-up in a local restaurant. So they did 2 days a week. It went well, and now they want to take over the entire restaurant to do it full time. So this is several $100,000 cost that we're talking about here. And to get started, they reached out into the community. Interesting enough, they started actually with a Kickstarter, and then in the Kickstarter they were told it didn't go so well, and then they met us, and we told them, well, you actually should not use like T-shirts as the incentives or tiles on the wall. You should actually use the best incentive or the favorite incentive of your customers, and that is what you cook in the kitchen. So the next day they started, okay, we're offering our meals as basically the repayment option for your money now, and it went on right for the roof, and so this crowdfunding approach harvested them over $26,000, which got them started and was the basis for them to get more loans in from other lenders as they saw that they had credibility. So now they have over 42 customers, I think, that have meal credits with them for that campaign, and anywhere between $200 or $400 a person. And now the question is, okay, now they come in and eat. What happens now? We're not keeping like the sheet with 40 names and trying to keep track and subtraction as they come in and just use up their meal credits. And this is basically what then the other side of Credible does. So we are turning over, now you see on the screen what they do when the customer comes in. They have a mobile app. They're using, in this case, they are actually using an iPad. It's also their, which is also their POS system for the regular business. And there's a Credible app. And then once they log in, they can actually see the current balances of the customers that have credit with them, so the 42. And you see myself there because I'm indeed eating there, but there are many other people as well. So people come in, and then you see, let's say it's Anne, a very nice woman in the neighborhood. She has $95 edible credits left, so she eats for $18.55. They give the mobile to Anne, and Anne has a chance to add some tip if she wants to. And in this case, she appears to be very generous with 20%, and hit pay on the mobile device. And the edible credit basically, or the store credit, gets diminished by the amount on the screen. And she just ate $22 off her credit, and so the balance is then going down automatically to the $73 that she now has left. So that's instant settlement of the transaction. No credit card involved in right now in this transaction, and she basically can leave her wallet at home or in her purse and just pays with her face, if you will. And now the question is, this is all nice and runs very smooth, and the businesses give us great feedback on this mobile redemption piece. It's just because they say, oh, that's all, that's really easy. It's the feedback that we hear the most. Now the question is, why would people invest and prepay a business in the first place? So part of it is you do it for the love of the business, for and of course their products. It's like in this case, we're showing a different business here. This is So Juice here. And they also say, if you pay us something in advance, we'll make it interesting for you. So you see different levels here that people can pay $100, $200, or even by paying for $500 juice in advance, which then you will eat over the next few months. And possibly 1 or 2 years, depending on how much you put down. And then you get basically the equivalent of the baker's dozen. The baker's dozen, as you know, it's like you pay for 12 and you get 13. And again, if you get rewards on top, you get extra store credit with the business. That's what looks as an interest rate. They, of course, don't need to take as cash out of their cash register. This again product that they cook or bake or grow, which is nicely aligned with the product. In that instance, it's actually the anti-Groupon, because Groupon takes sales out of the cash register. Here, it's actually extra incentive on top, but in products and services. So then to finish up with, how does it then work? How would somebody get on the service and join it? And just one thing I want to point out is Credible is set up to work with businesses that are already open for business, because legally in the underpinnings, it's a gift certificate model that we're using. It's not a security. So if you were a startup just with a business plan, you wouldn't be open for business, and then the SEC would be interested because it looks like a security. So, but if there's a business that is up and running, either, let's say, you're a customer and you say, hey, I want to give you funds, or the business say, I want to have a raise to get some money in to buy a new oven or whatever it is. On our homepage, there is, you see that green button in the upper right corner. You can click there, suggest the business. We get in touch with it. and once the business is up live, we'll spread the word, and the customers can prepay you online. And of course, the question is that, okay, is this really all free? Of course, not quite. We're trying to build this into a serious model, and that needs to be said as well. So there is a crowdfunding fee of 5% that comes out of the prepayment, and that includes, and this is important, if people would give you the money in the store, and you would have like credit card fees of 3.5%. So this includes the transaction fee, the 5%, which could be 3 to 3.5% for any business, with the management of credits and the reporting back to you, and some marketing support. We give you flyers and online tools to do it. And 1% of the overall transaction we actually donate back to the non-profit Slow Money organization, as we're working hand in hand with them to get this new funding mechanism out here. So this shows like what are credibles, why are we doing this, how does it work, and how could you get on board with it. And Alyssa told me earlier at 10:35 we would be switching to Q&A, which is right now. And I hope there's ways a few questions, either your thoughts or some clarifications. I'm happy to learn about. And Alyssa will, as I understand, facilitate the questions. And
perfect. And Arno, you can either go off screen share and then re-bring it on if you'd like, or if you oh, there you go. Looks like you ended it, so you can see the questions yourself. We've got questions rolling in. A little bit of advice and insights here as we move into questions, given that some folks might have been distracted and not gotten full details. Again, everyone will get a copy of Arno's slides, and he's got a wonderful website. So those will be resources coming afterwards. So I encourage everybody, anything that was unclear, serve it up. So the first question, Arno, is $1 equal 1 credit or 1 edible credit? Or is there another conversion equation you're using?
No, we're keeping it as easy as possible. So credibles, the reason we call it credibles is because it's not money that you can go to any store. If the store would give you a discount, you have that money in your wallet, and you can go to Home Depot and to Costco. And but this is basically store credit, so we call that edible credit. And if you get for $100 you get 100 in edible credit, then this is worth $100 at the time when you come in to redeem it. You say, let's say somebody puts in $400 and you say, okay, I'm giving you 10% extra, then you end up with 440 credibles, and the 440 credibles are then worth $440 at the retail prices when you come into.
Great, thank you. And we've got a question here about whether, so as folks are imagining doing this work in their own states, and they may be different states than you've done, some of the pilot work to date, how do the laws differ in each state regarding prepayment, and how do you navigate that?
Yes. So I think the key to make this successful is actually using models that people are already in use. So what we're basically using underlying is the model of the gift certificate. And by the way, Jenny Catherine, who's like one of the stewards of this overall program, was very helpful on the legal side, helping us to chaperone us to navigate this. So we're using basically the legal concept of a gift certificate, and they indeed differ state by state. And in order to make it pretty clear that we have a model that works for all, we looked at which state has the most protective laws for prepayments if you do a gift certificate. And we looked at a variety of states. In California, it's very consumer friendly, and what that means, the gift certificates never expire. So in some states, they say they can expire, but not in California. And in our terms and conditions, the credibles never expire. So we're basically covering the most restrictive law. And so for the business, the local business, if you sign up with us, we take care of the legal side of it in our terms and conditions. And there are a few other details after some time of inactivity. So if somebody completely forgets about this, you can charge a small fee against the balance. So the business doesn't need to keep the liability of the gift certificate on their books for decades to come, so that it actually at that point eats itself, which of course is not our business model. But so we got the legal things covered and basically make it easy for the business to facilitate this type of prepayment.
Thank you. That's helpful to understand. And so we have a couple of related questions. So you've mentioned that you handle the legal pieces, but is any business can any business qualify, or is it only existing businesses? Can it be startups? There's been a couple of questions about that.
Yeah. I think I was going a little bit at the very end. You have to be open for business already, so you need to be able, or at least like very close to deliver, so that you have the right to issue a gift certificate. If you're indeed a startup, you're just thinking about buying the store and the equipment, or you're in the business plan stage, it would be considered a security. So that's what it is. And we're looking at also good alignment also with slow money values. Is it organic, locally sourced? So we have so these are the two restrictions, like there's a mission alignment, and you need to be able to repay or repay basically your promise with products if somebody comes in, like regular customers would come in. And one thing, and I saw also some questions around this, we also give advice to the business, and there's a maximum limit that they should raise with advert credits, because if their entire customer base only exists out of people with store credit, they may actually run into problem of paying the bills and their employees with actual dollars at the time if they already took the entire prepayment and invested them. So there's some guidance that we give business that the advert credit is in the relationship to the revenues that they have on a regular basis. But it's an important question.
So that was in response to the flow reducer question, because of course we've seen different models for people doing prepayments in the past, and unless you handle the balance of folks coming in and accessing their credits versus new money, then you can run into problems. So you have a maximum limit then on the number of edible credits that can be sold relative to the overall volume?
Correct. So we look at how much are you selling, and then we give people like basically best practice advice how much they should be maximum selling prepaid. This is to a certain degree a theoretical question, because we haven't gotten anywhere near to those limits yet, as this is still a new model. But in our system, we also have built in that the credibles could also be on a time release. But quite frankly, this is practically hasn't been necessary to turn that on. So the flow has been, so far in all cases, like reasonable enough that it actually fit in with the business, and the business had the money up front and were able to invest in those things that make the flow happen in the first place.
Wonderful. So that's actually really helpful to hear. You haven't actually hit that point yet, but you do have a maximum amount in place, as well as some advice you can give should you get to that point. Now, you talked about that that it needs to be an existing business. You look for mission alignment and also the ability to repay. Is there any additional due diligence that you do on what businesses can be accepted? And if so, who does that? Is that you? Do you have a staff? How does that work?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely look at it like in the information that we can get from the business itself and how they embed it in their customer base. There's few information available. But I think the biggest factor in due diligence is actually for us community. It's we have a basically built-in community due diligence, if you will. It's the Slow Money network of like-minded people, and the Slow Money network has 17, 18 chapters now, and we could think about it like what role could the BALLE network play in such a model. So that's actually being suggested and filtered also. And if there are any doubts, we just ask people that are local. So what do they say about that business? And so that's this community due diligence. And in the end, if the business would get on and it's indeed not such a great business, then it wouldn't probably get prepaid in the first place. So there's a second layer of community due diligence for the customers. And as we said, this is meant to be a tool where customers can underwrite the business that they want to see thrive in their communities. And so they do their own underwriting. And it could as well happen that some businesses don't get a significant prepayment because they're not as hard or embedded in the communities as they think. And then our vehicle will surface that.
Great, thank you. You mentioned that you cover legal fees. What about sales tax liabilities? We've had the question asked, and we had David Corson-Knowles from the Slow Money team answer, but just to make sure everybody gets the answer to that question, how does this work with sales tax?
Yeah. So this is indeed, and thanks for the comment that you put into the chat there, David. Indeed, sales tax is handled like with any other gift certificate that you like, sophisticated gift card or just like a little piece of paper that you would get at a bakery or so. You pay for the gift certificate, and the sale is recognized if somebody comes in and pays with the store credit. So at the time of the sale and the gift certificate is redeemed, sales tax is due like it is would be normally due. So we advise the businesses also if you have to pay sales tax in San Francisco 9.5%, put that money aside. Don't put that all into the oven or into the restaurant, because if people come in, this is actually part of your cash that you have then to pay sales tax at the moment when the actual sale occurs. So that's business tell us, yeah, we understand how to pay sales tax, and once they know, okay, it happens when people come in and use the credibles, then they and their accountants typically know what to do.
Okay, great. We've got a couple more questions about how this works at the business level, and then we have another question about how this compares to other ways of doing pre-sales. So let's stick with a couple more business questions for now. You've mentioned a couple of times the kind of advice or best practices that you give to businesses who are using credibles. Is there a liability issue there for you? And then there's a follow-up piece there, which is if a restaurant goes under or another business, using the credibles, and there's outstanding credits, how does that work? Do the investors come to you? So are there some liability issues for you here? And then what happens if a business goes under?
Well, as we are also concerned who would be knocking on our door. So we make it pretty clear that when you go to the credible vehicle, that this is a pre-sale of the business to the customer. So it's actually a relationship between the business and the customers, and the business owes store credit for the prepayment amount. So that's pretty clear. And then what we make clear, and probably will make even more clear, is that the customer knows that there is a risk for buying a gift certificate. You basically have to believe that the business will be around to be able to fulfill your appetite when you're coming in to eat your edible credits at that point. So there is a risk that if the business goes away, the store credits for the business would also be going away. And there was a famous example several years ago when Sharper Image went out of business. There were gift certificates out there at that time. We actually see it more like having a positive effect that this risk is involved. What we have seen in a lot of cases, and even like before Credibles were around and other sort of payments were used as fundraising, is that the customer who is now has a relationship and is a little bit more in bed with the business and wants the business to be around, tells all their friends about this business and how they're now tied into it, brings the birthday parties to the restaurant, and we see those businesses then very often carried also by the community by basically turning the investor into community advocates for the businesses. And there is one additional notion that I didn't mention in the presentation, but it's part of the kicker of Credibles. Once we have a certain density in a community, we will turn on that the edible credits are actually interchangeable, or you could actually take businesses from the juice bar to the restaurant, and you could take the restaurant credibles to the juice bar, as long as it is on a reciprocal basis. And with our platform, we basically take care of the accounting and the balancing in the background. But each credible is still tied to a single business that issued store credit, and it is valid and around as long as the business is around.
Thank you. I think that reframing is really helpful because, of course, as folks imagine using this, they want to think through all of those possible scenarios, but it's also very helpful to think about the ways that this actually benefits the business, not just the what-if scenarios if all doesn't go well, and how this can help it go well. So, I think you've touched on this already a bit in terms of, again, how you do due diligence, that the slow money community is very important there. You could work with a BALLE network or some other kind of local economy convening to help with the due diligence piece. You're looking for the mission alignment. But what happens when you get to a place where, okay, you've got a business that it feels like they've got the mission alignment, they can repay, you've done your due diligence. What's the process then? Is there an application form? Is it more informal than that? Once you're ready and you say, okay, we're going to go, what happens then?
Yeah. So let's say somebody suggested you as a business, and we're ready to take you on. We have a series of steps where we then obtain the ingredients for your offer, right? And this would be a nice little write-up, a description. What you want to use the money for, inspiring pictures or link to a video that you already have, and then the incentive levels. So we have like an online form that we then send you. You give us that information. We have one of us probably check in with you. Hey, this is great, or maybe we have a picture where a person is in it, or something like this, to make it nice, and then we'll bring it live. So this is a follow up. We'll touch either way, but right now, as we're coming out of limited beta, our capacity is we're building up the capacity to accommodate more business, but we're getting really super leads in of great community-based businesses that we are bringing live in the next few days and weeks.
Thank you. And how long does that process typically take? So from, maybe finding out somebody might want to, be interested in using Credibles framework to actually, being on the site and offering Credibles. What's maybe a typical timeline there?
If everything is right and we have all the information to put the compelling offer live, we have done it in 1 or 2 days in the past for some of the businesses that you see up live there.
Great. I imagine there may be some follow-up interest from folks who may have some businesses in mind, maybe even their own. So there's just a couple more questions I want to get through. We've got maybe a little bit more than 5 minutes left. There was a question here about the relationship. It was a brief question, so Seth, if I don't quite get it right, feel free to add some additional details here. But what's the relationship between the gross revenue and your ideal funding amount? So I imagine this may go back to the issue of how many Credibles that you offer, but maybe that's a meaningful question to you, Arno. Relationship between gross revenue and ideal funding amount.
It's a little bit different. It's like if you're selling product or are you a restaurant, how often do people would be using your product? So we are, and this is very much like in the nature of food. So we don't have like a formula, and I think I see the question from Seth here, and it's a great question. We're not like in a position that we are like announcing a formula here because we also don't want to be gamed to a certain degree, and we're certainly not going in and auditing books here. We usually start a little bit more cautious, and then we see how it's going, and then we lift that. We would lift that maximum a little bit, but quite frankly, it's still somewhat an abstract question because we haven't seen people hitting the roof yet. So we have seen some fundings between a few thousand into the 20s, 20,000. So and none of that have ever like busted basically that ceiling. And I think that's and there are a few people who have a real like economic sense to look into this. But I think this is also a part of it is learning as we go. And just one thing I want to make clear: this is different than a Kickstarter, for example, where you announce a funding goal, right? And then if either you get the money or you don't. We deliberately said no. We don't start with a goal that you have to have that much money. You get the money in that you get, and it's basically prepaying for what it is. And there's also not a given deadline because we also want to get out of the rah-rah of financing your food business. We actually think prepayment should be an ongoing and permanent way to sustain your local suppliers.
I think it's very helpful, and you mentioned something earlier in the webinar as well about how this is maybe different than other online crowdfunding platforms. And I think that brings me to the final question, which is how does this maybe differ in your mind from other mechanisms for selling advanced credits, or doing advanced goods? For example, we featured Ari Durful's restaurant at the beginning of this series in early 2011, and he had done some pre-sales, but he didn't have the advantage of this great technology for doing that. So, do that compare and contrast with, maybe non-technology-based ways of doing pre-sales. What do you think?
Yeah, I think a lot of efforts like doing pre-sales, a lot of businesses do it today, and a lot of businesses have gift certificates, and everybody is doing like their homegrown solution, which I think work for a lot of businesses like Michael Schumann in his book and other or in the local wrestling book of Amy Cortese. There are examples how they have done it locally. But in the same way, you could say like Kickstarter, when we came around and put the social into donating, or Indiegogo, you were always able to put a PayPal button on your website and ask for donations. However, there wasn't as much music happening on that PayPal button as was then happened once you used other crowdfunding funding platforms. And so we basically want to say this is an easy self-service solution, and especially what we make easy is the tracking later on. Both the customer and the business can log in and see where the credits stand, and then we make them interchangeable between businesses. So if you have a lot of egg credit, but you would want to have some bread with those eggs, here's a solution for you. And we're also different than the aforementioned crowdfunding platforms like Indiegogo and Kickstarter. They're basically good at getting a large sum of money in, and then there is often a symbolic reward, or you're getting a prototype. Let's say the Pebble watch is like the big example. That got a few million actually in funding. But food is something that you actually eat over time in small portions, and so none of the existing crowdfunding platforms actually have a stored credit management component where you literally eat what earlier over time. We thought for the market, if we have like a ready-made platform for that people just can join like they're joining other ones. And personally, here's a shout out. The other model is CSA, and if you can commit to a regular box, I have a CSA box. I always say it's like so the best model to create visibility for the producer in terms of what they're shipping. But if your life or part of your eating is not as predictable as a weekly box, you have edible credits where you can eat it at your own leisure.
I think that's great, the comparison to a community-supported agriculture, a CSA arrangement. And, of course, you've said to me, Arno, that right now you've started with food, but you could use this kind of technology framework for businesses beyond the food sector as well, in which case there might not be a CSA corollary. So I think it's very helpful to understand the kind of unique positioning here of the Credibles model that does some things differently and has some benefits beyond either other online crowdfunding mechanisms or non-technology-based ways of doing pre-sales. And I know this has grown out of your own work as a slow money investor and leader over the last years. So I think we're just about at time. So I want to, again, apologize for folks that, despite all of our testing, there was an issue with the muting today. So we'll make sure we get that figured out before our next webinar. Again, anybody who just really didn't feel like they were able to fully participate like they liked, I'd be happy to do a refund. So you could email me, Alyssa, ALISSA, @thealocalist.org, and I'd be happy to take care of that. We'll also be following up in the next day or two with a copy of the recording, as well as a copy of Arno's beautiful slides. So you can watch for that from our staff member, Mikel Davila. And finally, I will just, Arno, we really, really appreciate your time. We know you've done a similar webinar just recently, so you're presenting all over the place, and really appreciate your time and you hanging through the technology issues as well.
Thank you, Lisa, and everybody on the call. We feel so passionate about it, and I think we have something real at our hands here. And I'd love to see you guys being involved and paying with your face in the future and eating your credits. Would be a great model if you'll be part of it.
All right, wonderful. Well, so we've got your contact information here for anybody that's interested in maybe starting to use the Credibles platform. And thank you, everybody. I think we lost very few people amidst some of the kind of early issues in the webinar. So wonderful to be in conversation. And thanks, everyone, for your time and good questions. And I look forward to being in conversation again next month. So thanks, everyone, and happy Tuesday.